Almost all the credit should go to Hidetaka Miyazaki. Sorry for mispronouncing. George R.R. Martin never believed he played a significant role in Elden Ring creation. Legendary author George R.R. Martin was a big part of Elden Ring writing, but insists that most of the credit should go to Miyazaki. Elden Ring is from Software and Miyazaki's greatest success and one of the best games of all time. The game has sold over 25 million copies, and Shadow of the Earth is the highest rated DLC of all time. One of the most noteworthy things about the game is from Software collaboration R.R. Martin. How much did he put into the story? That will be interesting to know. You guys know? If you know, tell me. While the game creation is widely attributed to Miyazaki and from Soft, George R.R. Martin also played a big role in its creation. I think he created the world, and that was it. Maybe not the story between the characters, but just the world, how it functions and stuff like that. World building, he did the world building. That was the word I wanted to say. Despite this, the author has constantly downplayed his role, giving much of the credit to Miyazaki himself. Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin made an absolute masterpiece. R.R. Martin's involvement in Elden Ring began with a request from Miyazaki and from Software team to develop the foundational lore of the lands between. That's what I'm saying. Just the world building. In an interview with Edge magazine, Miyazaki shared that he admired Martin's passion for fantasy and found his ideas to be an inspiring basis for the game's world. And immediately from talking to him, it just became apparent his skill and his passion for the fantasy genre for the games as well. And he just felt so fresh to have those conversations with someone who was passionate about the same things. That's great. I hope for more collaborations like this in the future. If they are like great minds, great world builders, storytellers, writers, they can do this if they have a good chemical like relationship, let's say, writing relationship. Over a series of meetings, Martin collaborated with the team and made what will become the history of the lands between, set thousands of years before the events of the game. But Martin's okay, so it's like the world building just before the events of the game, like the past of the main story. But Martin's contributions ended with the history. Yeah, the history. That's what I want to say. He did not pen in-game text, dialogue, or plot points. Miyazaki has said there is no sequel in consideration, but if it ever happens, you want Martin on it too. So the question is, Martin also on Elden Ring Nightrain story or history or whatever, or the history is already used from Elden Ring 1. That will be interesting to know. As Martin himself explained, his job was to develop the events that occurred thousands of years before the game's storyline. His foundational work was the rock upon which Miyazaki and his team eventually built the intricate atmospheric storytelling that we know and love. Of course, almost all the credit should go to Miyazaki and his astonishing team of games designers who have been laboring on the game for half a decade or more, determined to create the best video game ever. Of course, because of this, Martin's name was a big part of the game marketing, but in his blog, Martin described his role as a small, emphasizing that the real credit belonged to Miyazaki and his team, who spent over 5 years laboring to bring the game to life. That might be the case, taking into consideration that Martin doesn't like to write big books nowadays, if you know what I mean. Okay, and the Elden Ring success has allowed FromSoft to explore new genres. The results, hopefully we'll get some more of this collaboration in the future. The results of this collaboration speaks for themselves. Elden Ring went past being just a game and has become a cultural phenomenon. The Shadow of the Earth DLC that came out this year received a score of 94. Holy smokes, that's high. And this is the highest rated DLC of all time. From Software also reported that the game sold 25 million copies ahead of the DLC's launch. Miyazaki also acknowledged that while the open world format contributed to the game's success, it doesn't mean this will be the studio standard moving forward. He expressed interest in exploring other genres and approaches when building on the lessons learned from Elden Ring, and now with Elden Ring Nightrain, the team is switching up with a new genre. That will be cool to see. If they put the same quality into the games, I think that will be alright. Hopefully. FromSoft's journey into open world design was a bold move that redefined the studio approach to game development. Miyazaki admitted he wasn't entirely sure if the team could pull off such a massive and non-linear experience. We should get more of this non-linear, but also linear if they have a good story. I don't care that much. But almost the quality is the most important of the story, I guess. But almost 2 years later, we know that they did, and boy, it is good. Would like Miyazaki and Martin to collaborate on a sequel? Let us know your thoughts. No. Let's check this out too. Subscribe and like this one.
In my first playthrough of Elden Ring, I distinctly remember reading this message: Fortnite. Turns out it was a prophecy, because Elden Ring Nightrain
What?
is
Fortnite?
kind of like Fortnite.
What? I was thinking like twice if I heard it right.
Kind of.
Why?
I mean, you drop in from the sky at the start of the game, and you have to outrun a circle, closing in around you. But that's where the similarities end.
Oh, so it has some elements from Fortnite, from whatever it's called, Battle Royale games.
Thankfully, a ton of articles that you might have missed have actually come out about the game. And in this video, I'm going to try and get everyone up to speed. So, From Software has actually never done anything like this before. They've spun off the Elden Ring IP in a way that they think justifies a standalone Elden Ring title that you'll be able to purchase and play sometime in 2025. It will exist in complete isolation from your other copy of the game. In a phrase, Nightrain is a co-op survival roguelike souls-like with some battle royale and
Roguelike Souls like PvE. Also we play together against bosses and stuff like that. That's a cool idea, I think.
extraction elements as well.
What do you think?
And you know, that sentence tells you everything and nothing at the same time. So let's break it down. With special thanks to the journalists who have played a demo of the game and written about it, I'm going to try and walk you through a typical Nightrain session from beginning to end.
Let's see.
Starting with the selection of your character. In Nightrain, you don't create your own character from scratch. Rather, you'll be picking from a selection of 8 preset Nightfarers, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, abilities, and ultimates. And these characters form the foundation upon which you'll build, collecting different weapons and buffs within each session to make your character unique. To start, this is...
So they pre-select them in a way for you? Okay.
They're the titular character of
I don't care if the gameplay is good.
Nightrain. They'll always start with this large longsword equipped, but what's way
I love long swords.
more important than this character's weapon is their ability and their ultimate. Their ability is the claw shot. It's a grappling hook that can pull you towards enemies or away from them.
Okay.
To use an ability, apparently you hold down Y or triangle in conjunction with one of the controller triggers. And assumedly, the other trigger is used to activate your character's ultimate attack, which, in the case of Wilder, is an explosive attack that you charge up at close range for massive damage.
Okay.
So each character is defined by their ability and their ultimate.
Passive traits, unique ability, ultimate attack.
Appears to be the stats that each character favors. While you can level up stats manually, PC Gamer notes that some characters will still always have more health than others, for example.
Yeah, they pre-select things a bit for you. It's not that much customizable, I guess, like the first Elden Ring.
On that note, the Guardian...
But if it's co-op, multiplayer or whatever, yeah, I think we can expect that. If the gameplay is great, I think, and the story they put into the game, I think it can be a great game.
Guardian is best suited as the tank for the group, because they have high HP as well as a passive that favors the usage of shields. Their ability is this whirlwind attack that interrupts enemies so that your teammates...
Oh, I love the wings that do this effect. That's kind of cool to see and unique.
...can have a moment to shine. Their ultimate ability is Wings of Salvation, which is this crazy dive bomb attack that raises nearby ally defenses and also gives you the option to endure.
Does it stun them at the same time when it hits them?
Enemy attacks for a limited time.
That's great.
After you devastate them.
Looks awesome.
And then there's the Duchess, who's another favorite character of many who played. They have a Bloodborne sidestep dodge, and they also have an ability that reapplies damage done by you and your teammates in the last few seconds. So you can basically double any damage done within that period of time.
Nice.
That cloaks
Nice.
your nearby teammates, enhancing your stealth and allowing you to make a quick getaway if needed.
I wonder how he does cloak all these teammates. Like the animation, I mean, animation wise. Or it's just like a simple classic buff.
The Recluse is the mage of the group, and their passive ability allows them to acquire FP whenever an enemy is slain. Their ability is called Magic Cocktail, and it passively stockpiles different statuses, like poison or fire or ice,
Nice.
whenever an enemy is hit with that type of attack. Then it releases a unique attack that's different depending on the status that was stockpiled. Their ultimate is Song of the Blood Soul, which by enemies with an effect
There's some strong stuff, I guess.
that restores health to any player that attacks them. Special thanks to PC Gamer for transcribing all these class abilities so neatly. There are, however, four
What?
other characters
Didn't pay attention.
or other
What the heck is Elden, Nightrain, our big explainer covering new characters, loot, recurring mechanics and more? As you can tell you from spending a full day playing Swing-Off.
other characters who are less understood at this stage. But I think I've been able to puzzle out a few based on the trailer footage and other interviews. This, for example, is an archer character who apparently has a sort of third-person aiming mode that's unique to them. We see them summoning a spectral hawk here, and they can do that because they
Zelda-like.
to a spectral tree,
Souls-like became Zelda-like.
which you can see on the right. This obviously allows you to navigate the terrain in a certain direction for a set amount of time, and From Software thinks this will give you some versatility in how you decide to navigate the map in certain situations. Speaking of spirits, another character is apparently meant to have a spiritual companion, and from what I can see in the trailer, I
Which
don't
one?
think this character has been shown at all. Next, there's a character that has an innate deflect mechanic that's not unlike the deflect buff that's given by the deflecting hard tier in Shadow of the Erd Tree. I'm probably the most excited for this character. GN notes that there's a character able to raise slabs of rock out of the earth, and I think that's
This is
the
the tank.
character that we see here. Let me know in the comments which characters you'll be picking. I think there's also a lot of strategy to be had in the interplay between different character abilities, and which group composition will be most optimal is definitely an interesting question.
Yeah, of course.
So, in addition to enabling you to jump into games easily with these characters, From Software also wanted to make characters like this because each of them has their own unique storyline and backstory that will become uncovered as you play. After selecting
Cannot wait to see those backstories.
your character, you spawn in at the Round Table Hold, which returns from Elden Ring. Here, the characters you didn't choose will be able to be interacted with, and here you can customize each character in ways that we'll get to a little bit later.
Nice.
For now, let's explain what happens after you jump into a session, which you can either do alone or with two others by your side. Note that the password system is returning if you want.
And if in some session there are no players, it will be a bit like Dragon's Dogma, maybe. It will have AI bots, maybe.
Friends, but playing with
It reminds me in some way of Dragon's Dogma.
randoms is also possible, and you'll have to be
The graphics too, the art style.
on the same platform as anyone else you want to play with.
Also the creatures in the game
Prepare to claim
remind me of Dragon's Dogma.
the life of the Night Lord.
A Nightrain session takes place over 3 in-game days, provided you can stay alive that long. And apparently each 15-minute long day starts like this, with you gliding down from a spectral bird into a land called, according to From Software, is an alternate reality
So it's over 2 hours, one session.
we explored in it.
That's kinda long for casual players, I think.
It comes across as this distorted reality, with recognizable elements from Limgrave that will be jumbled up with every new session you create. And on top of this, FromSoft notes that some versions of Limfeld will be drastically different from others, with meteoric impacts and swamps and forests of rot and active volcanoes that all
That's different maps are always great, always appreciated. It's good to diversify and not get bored.
Diversify the landscapes
Yeah.
and offer new threats.
And new threats, yeah.
Once you've chosen a landing location, you'll be on the
Also, always great to test your skills.
running with this new enemy
Have lots of monsters, different types of monsters.
at about 150% speed. Torrent doesn't seem to be in this game, and instead you can climb cliffs and vault ledges with your character, and you can use your new powerful abilities to kill enemies and power up your character even more as quickly as possible. Because each day only lasts 15 minutes, and when night falls, the map will shrink as the night's tide
So maybe you should survive at least one night, at least 50 minutes.
comes closing in. Apparently, you start each run pretty vulnerable at level 1, but before long, PC Gamer notes that many enemies quickly become akin to nothing more than trash mobs. Presumably, most enemies in this game are probably meant to just be mown down as efficiently as possible by your characters, as you prepare for the true
Okay, so I think leveling is much faster, of course,
threats that are to come. One such threat is the appearance
to keep the playtime maybe lower for casual players.
who can invade your world and stalk you at random.
The animations look great though.
I will swat away any and all approach.
Defeat invaders like Margit, and you'll receive a favor of the night, which buffs your character in some way. Indeed, defeating bosses is just one of many ways to power up your character during a run. According to PC Gamer, loot now includes passive skills like stat buffs and active effects and affinities for certain statuses.
That's great. That makes you try to discover new places, new items, secret locations, I guess.
Additionally, defeating bosses allows you to sometimes choose from different loot or upgrade options. In addition to that, loot is also now tiered with that signature color-coded rarity that you'll instantly recognize if you've played Diablo. And obviously this is important for this kind of game because it forces you to constantly evaluate new upgrades for your build.
Yep.
I like the idea of a tier
It's
system
good for strategizing, I guess.
for weapons in this game because it adds variety to your playthroughs. For
And variety, of course.
example, if you don't like using a longsword generally, but then you find a longsword that's like a really high rarity, all of a sudden you're evaluating that weapon in a different light, and it might actually be worth using and getting out of your comfort zone in that way. So while armor upgrades appear to be absent,
It's good also for replayability and exploring new things.
in favor of choosing different skins for your character instead, weapon upgrades are a really big part of each run. And the equipment screen now apparently has been simplified to just 3 weapon slots for each hand, so that's 6 in total. What's worth noting though is that unlike in Elden Ring, there are no weight penalties or stat requirements for these weapons, so there's actually no downside to equipping 6 weapons. In fact, it's a really important thing to do because weapons actually now come with passive buffs as well.
And maybe it will be great if different monsters have different affinities to different weapons, so you can strategize even more.
These passive buffs will apply to your character even if they're simply equipped, and even if you don't meet the level requirement for a weapon, which is a requirement that some powerful weapons do have. Should you die in Nightrain, you'll be put into a downed state, where your teammates are actually encouraged
Oh, they can save you like in Fortnite, because he started with that.
to damage you in order to revive you. From a gameplay perspective, this is a really cool take on the revival mechanic, because it's usually a bit of a drag in other games. Unlike in other games where you have to stand still and revive someone, this allows you to make use of your character's weapons and unique arsenal and skills. What's more, you get the added bonus of being able to slap your friends silly for dying in a dumb way.
Teammate watching while down as I charge my diamond while ultimate attack them. I'm about to save their life. That's funny.
Which sounds kind of cathartic. If you die during the daytime, apparently you have the choice to respawn with a slight punishment as level. But if it's night, you'll have no such option, and the Ring of Rain will be closing,
So nighttime is more hardcore.
and that will bring with it damage to those who get drenched. And at the ring's close, every day you'll be forced into a randomized boss fight with a challenging enemy that represents the end of that day in the dark, and you'll be forced to rely on your fellow Nightfarers to revive you in the midst of combat. And if all three of you lose your lives at any time,
Just a second.
it's game over. It's back to the round table hold with you all. While most everything that you've collected is lost upon death, one thing is not, and that's a resource. Merc is a currency that persists between rounds. It's able to be spent in the round table hold to buy character emotes, customizable skins, and most importantly, relics. Relics are a permanent
Is how we get this is like killing monsters and we get this stuff and then we can get emotes and relics and stuff like that.
and each character can slot in and tailor playstyles to your liking. IGN mentions that some relics allowed them to deal extra damage with throwing knives, and
This reminds me of Warcraft 3 relics that give you some buffs, that give you different buffs.
some relics boosted the damage that you do with a certain weapon type,
Yeah.
which is cool because then you would go into each round hoping to get that weapon. PC Gamer notes that they found relics that allowed their healing flasks to also heal their allies, relics that marked treasure for them on the map, or relics that made their critical attacks give extra runes.
That's great. Like when you're having a hard time getting some relics and making it a bit easier, at least you don't die that fast.
It seems like all of these relics are color-coded as well for different characters. You can also perform something called a relic rite to switch around their color coding. I'm not too sure I understand how that works just yet. While you're in the round table hold, you're also able to visit a training ground to test out your character's new kit to prepare for your next incursion. Apparently there's even a codex here that gives background lore on characters and enemies, which is new for a Souls-like game. But once you're done here, it's back out into day one of another
Yeah, interesting.
journey, where you'll have to hope that you can survive. Interestingly, when you do die out in the world, there's a chance that a red corpse will show up in someone else's world, and
What?
that's your corpse, and in that world, apparently it will be a fantastic source of loot for them. This, according to From Software,
So they can get your loot? I don't understand.
is Nightrain's unique asynchronous online element, and this is in addition to the usual phantoms that you'll be able to see running around the world with you. On that note, leaving messages for others is apparently a feature that's been removed in this game. It was removed in the name of speed and fluidity, which
I don't pay
are
any
two
attention.
things with you. On that note, leaving messages for others is apparently a feature that's been removed in this
Okay.
game, and it was removed in the name of speed and fluidity, which are two things that are clearly very important priorities for Nightrain's gameplay. This
I think the gameplay is much faster than Elden Ring, the single player.
game revolves around getting as much done as possible in your 15 minutes
Yeah, also because you are time limited, of course.
days before each boss.
Don't have time to admire the surroundings that much.
Leveling up, for example, is another thing that's been streamlined. No longer do you need to sit and rest at a site of grace to level up and restore your flasks. Rather, you only need to be in the proximity of grace to do so. And even leveling up has been streamlined to where you can auto-level recommended stats just by mashing a button, and this process will automatically upgrade the stats that suit your character. As noted by IGN, the structure of the game really lends itself to this gradual build in tension that culminates in a boss fight, and then that tension recedes again.
That's awesome.
And the Ring of Rain retracts.
I think this might be also inspired a bit by Devil May Cry, that Cerberus master,
away from you. All
the dog with 3 heads, created by Hades, if you know the Greek legend, the Greek mythology, I mean.
enemies killed on day 1 remain dead, and with day 2 beginning, your team is able to get back to exploring and preparing for that next challenge, which will require you to synergize your builds together and come up with strategies to take out the field bosses you wish to face. So I think this process of looting and exploring and fighting creates really good peaks to the gameplay, as From Software says as well. And they believe that this will condense the experience of Elden Ring, fitting exploration and character building and discovery and challenge into just one short play session. At the culmination of the third day, you'll face the Night Lord, or rather, you'll face one of 8 chosen Night Lords that you would have set out to kill when you first left Round Table Hold. According to the game's director, these final bosses will be gradually unlocked as you progress. I assume each Night Lord will be harder and harder in difficulty as well. One Night Lord that we've had a glimpse of already is called Gladius, and they're a hound that is capable of splitting into 3 wolves, which will require your team to use their abilities and contain the situation and just fight 3 enemies at once.
It will be good if the monsters force the entire team to think strategically, and everyone in the team has to be a strategist and work with the other teammates to do this right, to kill them.
I love that many of these bosses appear to be designed for the co-op experience. The Centipede Demon is another example, as their body parts can fall off and fight independently of the main boss.
Nice.
Which will keep your teammates busy. The whole thing sounds like it will be a far cry from the co-op experience of the base game of Elden Ring, which often results in your whole team going to town, can only really focus on one of you at once. So
yeah, of course it's more multiplayer focused.
Glad they're taking multiplayer into account at a whole nother level this time. As for the game's replayability, some players have noted concerns with the variety of locations and the variety of bosses in their 4-hour play session, though From Software was quick to reassure them that the full game will have a lot more variation to it. Really, I feel like so much of this game's success or failure will come down to that simple fact. You know, how much replayability can From Software really offer in this one area of Limveld? And this brings me to the inclusion of characters and enemies from Dark Souls in Elden Ring, which I feel like is probably...
That will be cool, like getting some nostalgia from the older games and making you play with teammates against them. That will be really cool.
The most controversial topic of this announcement. So this character seems to be the Firekeeper from Dark Souls 3. This spider is the Duke's dear Freya from Dark Souls 2. This is the Centipede.
Well, I never played them to tell exactly, but that's cool if that's the case.
Demon from Dark Souls 1. And this is straight up the Nameless King from Dark Souls 3. A lot of people have been laughing, rightfully so, at the idea of people like me who explain the lore having to explain why
you have to explain
characters like the
what? Why the Nameless King is in Elden Ring?
Explain the lore. Having to explain why characters like the Nameless King have made their way into Elden Ring. And I'm not gonna lie, I find this situation kind of funny as well. I agree that it's a bit ridiculous that
he was not killed right in Dark Souls. In Dark Souls.
They're in this world, especially at first glance. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like these characters or...
That's why he came back, to be killed in the right way. Of course, I'm joking.
...have been added to the game for some deep lore reason. We all know why they're primarily here. They're here because this is a way for From Software to reuse their extremely high quality repository of assets and enemies and animations from their past games. Tons of enemies and animations in Elden Ring are already taken from their past games. It's a technique that frees up From Software to focus on designing new games and new assets that matter even more than these ones. And I personally don't have a huge problem with that. I think a lot of people would have a problem with...
Me neither, because I didn't play the first few games.
This spin-off game existing instead of a new IP, but I guess...
But I want to play them. Hopefully, yeah, we don't get too much of the same. stuff. I don't think we will, anyhow.
Cutting corners like this does allow them to focus their resources.
I don't think it will be boring.
I personally don't really have a huge problem with it, although I don't know the extent to which they're taking bosses from Dark Souls, so there's definitely still the risk that they could overdo this, in some people's eyes especially. For a while there, I was really desperately trying to understand how the universes of Dark Souls and Elden Ring could be conjoined in this way.
To illicit people? What? I never see those at the right time. Okay, I don't know what it was. Whatever.
The official Dark Souls Twitter account has acknowledged this overlap between universes, and it notes that ancestral foes are appearing
So for the way the remnants of a fire that once burned bright.
in the world, and that they are remnants of a fire that once. And in an interview with Famitsu, the lore supposedly suggests that these characters were drawn here from other worlds thanks to the influence of the Night Lord. While it's a bit cheesy to have this overlap between universes, these universes overlapping kind of makes sense in the context of Nightrain. This is a world that is in flux. Most importantly though, Nightrain in general doesn't seem to be connected to the canon. Rather, the game's director has called
That's interesting in some ways. We explore new stuff.
completely separate and parallel to the world of Elden Rings. But that doesn't mean we can't still enjoy the story, and it also doesn't mean that Nightrain won't teach us anything about the lore of Elden Ring. Even if it's a separate story, these events are still occurring in parallel to Elden Ring's canon, and thus they can still potentially offer context about Elden Ring's world. Cut content is a good example. Like, that's not canon, and yet it gives us context about
That's
the
interesting
world,
to see.
what the developers are thinking in regards to a lot of these characters and a lot of this lore. These shadowy titans, for example, could give us clues about the dead titans in the lands between. The Night Lord
Yeah, give us more secrets to explore.
could be related to the Nox, and they could be the Lord of Night that the Nox have been anticipating for eternity. The Round Table Hold is likely in opposition to the Night Lord for good reason as well, and yeah, that's all valid lore, even if it's parallel to Elden Ring, I think. What I'm most looking forward to, though, are the character stories, because I think those stories will be good. So, all in all, I'm excited to see what the game's new director, Junya Ishizaki, cooks up here. This director has taken a risk doing something
Wait a
different
second. My kid came to disturb the stream.
with this project, and I think it says a lot about the company that they'd trust a new director with a project like this that no one saw coming. So I'm excited to play it, and I'm excited to
Yeah, me too.
guys pick up all the loot that I had on my lifeless corpse. As for my personal thoughts on the game, I'll give those full thoughts when I get a chance to play it, but the reason I'm excited is because this solves the main problem I have with Elden Ring, and that's its
Which one?
replayability. In Elden Ring, once you roughly know where all the items are, replaying the game becomes a bit of a chore because it's just a matter of deciding on the best items for your build, and then you have to commit to this sometimes agonizing speedrun from one side of the map to the other, and there's so many places you ignore in the pursuit of that. It's just harder to get lost and immersed in the world when you're replaying the game. But
I don't think if you replay like 2-3 times with different characters.
you can continuously get lost and immersed in this ever-changing world with ever-changing builds, and I think that's the experience of playing a Souls-like for the first time that we all love. And if this game succeeds, I think it will be because it nails that feeling of playing a Souls-like game for the first time and not really knowing where to go. In Nightrain, that Elden Ring experience of discovery and challenge can be distilled down to this short, punchy play session that you can also share with friends, and I think that's absolutely more than enough reason
Yeah, you can socialize more in this, or cry more to your teammates because of dying a lot.
for this game to exist. And yeah, I think it'll do really well if they nail that randomization aspect,
My kid joined the stream.
diversity in the world. Also, I really
He's
hope
kinda jealous
they add some sort of PvP mode
because I'm
to
not
this
playing
game
with him and
down
I'm
the
streaming.
line, because the pieces are all
Right
there,
at the door.
and people joke about Elden Ring having a battle royale mode, but unironically that would suit Elden Ring really well with its diversity of options for PvP, and I hope this does well and they keep investing
Yeah, me
in
too.
this kind of game, because this is kind of the foundation for an everlasting, incredible Elden Ring experience from PvE perspective, yes, but
Mhm.
it would add even more replayability, and
Yeah,
yeah, I really hope they go down.
yeah, they should add PvP too.
If you want to learn more, please check out all the articles that are
So like and subscribe to this guy.
in the
I think
description, much info.
Tejas.
Anyway,
Tejas
subscribe.
doesn't want to let me stream. It's funny. Nightrain situation is crazy. Let's also check out this one. Subscribe and like this guy too.
For a minute, I had the opportunity to look really smart and break the news to everyone that this was going to be an entirely new IP when I saw they cared enough about the name to actually trademark the word Nightrain a month ago. Oh, the amount of egg on my face
Oh, that's
if I had
crazy.
gone public with that prediction. Holy nope, it's just like the
Ladies of the Old Lords, Firekeeper, or some chick with the same mask. Nameless King. Is that the goddamn Nameless King? Is that the shitting hell? Is this Ogdo Bogdo looking fuck? Pretty much. He's really jealous of you guys. Is obviously the worst joke. Okay, I think there's that.
First off, this was headlined as a co-op action experience, but it is
Okay.
absolutely playable solo, and I feel like we should
Oh, that's great. If you don't have friends.
get that out of the way early, since multiplayer titles tend to have this expectation nowadays that they're always going to be online whether you like it or not. And despite Nightrain being marketed as a co-op adventure with co-op shenanigans with your friends, it's built to be just as friendly towards a single player experience. Registration starts January 10th, but it doesn't look like the actual network test will be available until February, and on console only, leading me to believe this could be looking at a June release at the absolute earliest, assuming
Okay.
no big delays end up happening. On top of all
That'll be cool.
like a modding sandbox, Nightrain seems to take multiple of their established IPs and just blend them into a massive fan service disguised as a roguelike.
If you don't have time to get all the games, play all the games one after the other, you can play them all at once now.
Miyazaki has already gone on record saying he does in fact know about the seamless co-op mod, which I think is hilarious, and that it got some gears turning in the
Yeah.
office about potential multiplayer tweaks and experiences and whatnot. And we all
Let me read a bit. That's not to say we won't consider other ways like you and your friend played from beginning to end, total co-op. That's not to say we won't consider ideas like that with our future games. That's awesome. I love co-op.
multiplayer tweaks and experiences and whatnot. And we also know this isn't really the first time FromSoft has messed around with roguelike, since Bloodborne had this neat chalice dungeon mechanic that borrowed quite a bit from what you would see in the average roguelike. Randomized items, rewards, boss encounters, and even the dungeon layouts were slightly different each time. So even though Nightrain's development is being helmed by a different director, the idea was still greenlit almost immediately as it was presented. And this new director, Junya Ishizaki, was apparently a pillar of Elden Ring's development, and
I've been involved with the development from games since the original Dark Souls, where I was a level designer, and on Bloodborne I was level designer and battle designer, and on Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring I was combat designer. Is your first time as a game director? I guess not.
even has roots that tie all the way back to the development of Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. So it's important to note this new guy didn't just come from nowhere. He's
Yeah.
been a known presence in FromSoft for quite a while.
It's good that we get experienced people to do this, because people are hyped a lot about this, I guess.
Ishizaki has personally said the content of the game will be challenging, but seems to want to focus on revamping the game's design with what's already established instead of making everything from scratch. The main objective of any normal run seems to be surviving 3 days in a location as a team of 3 people. The setting takes place in a reimagined realm adjacent to Veld and features all the most recognizable workings of
I like
an
those
average
flames.
roguelike. Randomized weapon locations, enemy and boss placements, relics you can attach to your character to improve certain stats and character abilities, and the occasional natural disaster to keep things interesting. Most of the starting classes are still up in the air as far as individual class info, the roles and proficiencies of each class, so on and so forth. But thanks to detailed interviews with Ishizaki, most of this info was communicated as transparently as possible. There's the Duchess, who is equipped to be an assassin-type character with a magic dagger that has an emphasis in stealth and critical hits, a Valkyrie-themed combatant known as the Wilder that looks
Love the Valkyrie. This I'm gonna play in the first Elden Ring. Love the massive swords.
To wield a longsword and a small shield similar
And the small shield, yeah.
to the Raging Wolf class in the old network test.
I mostly play like knight type of characters. Like shield wielders and big swords in all of games.
Just with a
Where I can play them.
slightly smaller dick, I guess. We can see a scout type character that wields a bow and can be seen using a character ability somewhat like the Mighty Shot Ash of War, and this one I'm particularly excited for because according to an IGN interview, this class will also feature a pretty big departure from how FromSoft has traditionally handled bow combat. I don't know who this guy is or what he represents, so I'm just gonna call him Birdman. In the trailer, we see
What they say. Two more characters will play as fine, including one who will have the ability to raise a pillar of rock out of the earth to climb up and snipe arrows from. That's an interesting take. Yeah, on the ranger, I guess, or whatever he's called. I don't play the first Elden Ring yet.
I don't know who this, so I'm just gonna call him Birdman. In the trailer, we see the Birdman, or what I'm presuming to be the Guardian class, using their pretty scenic view from above, before crashing down and creating There will be a total of 8 different classes to choose from, and unfortunately not all of them got an equal amount of limelight in the interviews, but we can extract
He doesn't like me becoming a streamer, so... Chili. Chili. He tries to sabotage my stream.
what the other classes could be using additional shots in the trailer. In this shot, we can see another tank-centric class that focuses on heavy weapons, making use of the Golem Halberd, and an entirely new movement ability, or possibly an ultimate, that sees him propelled skyward via the power of divine farts. Each run will have its own day-night cycle, with bosses standing in the way at the end of each night. Defeating the boss will allow your team to progress to the next day. As the cycle continues,
Defeating the boss should include like having a new boss to fight a harder boss after it.
the explorable area of the map will decrease gradually in size, a la Fortnite or Apex Legends, which I think is an interesting mechanic to bring into a game.
Battle Royale like.
Additional movement abilities, lack of fall damage, and improved area
So you move your ass faster, keep up with the team.
traversal have all been added into Nightrain's core gameplay loop to enhance this experience and make your character as mobile as possible in order to make this work. The player doesn't seem to be restrained by equip load or armor stats either, and will instead be limited to the 3 slots in their inventory per hand, meaning as long as you have a slot available, you can pick it up and use it, even if it's just for a passive bonus attached to a weapon you don't really give a shit about. Additionally, multiple characters are seen in the trailer taking advantage of a new traversal system that allows you to summon a spectral hawk that carries you to a fixed location somewhere in the
Inspired from Zelda, I guess, for sure.
Everything about the game's movement, and especially its combat, seems to be much faster and much more involved than anything we've seen in Elden Ring. But
Yeah,
the
of course.
greatly enhanced mobility does facilitate some very exciting encounters with the local
So you have to strategize faster, I guess, think faster. Forces you to do that.
flavor. The core gameplay hinges around a team of 3 players, no PvP, but there is a separate difficulty for single-player mode, which I'm assuming is indicative that Nightrain will also be mod-friendly despite having co-op focus, I hope. Might want to have
I don't think so, because everyone has to have the same mod for the game to work, so that's highly unlikely.
2 different profiles set up just in case. You can technically communicate with your teammates, but this does seem very limited and doesn't really extend past lighting up parts of the map with markers and pins as a suggestion to your teammates on where to go next. Communication is encouraged very lightly, but it definitely doesn't feel like a necessity. No team chats or voice channels or anything, which is absolutely wonderful for people like me who just flat out just don't want to talk to your ass.
Fortnite emoticons. That will be bad.
Of course, there's also the gesture system, and due to its familiarity with
Yeah, exactly what I said, gesture. It should be subtle, should be like extreme like Fortnite. This is more of a serious game.
players, I'm sure that'll be the preferred system. Fortunately, there is a password system for people who want to play alongside their friends, and literally nobody else. Good. Some of the
That's cool. Against hackers.
cooperative elements they've spotlighted so far have honestly been really impressive. It's not something I would ever expect to see in an IP even remotely close to Elden Ring, but a shared rune system, a visible outline attached to each player, and the idea of there being a revival mechanic that allows you to resurrect down teammates all point to how seriously they're taking the co-op aspect of this project. Like IPs, I would expect them to fine-tune the experience, not only as they get closer to release, obviously, but also be looking at the schematic for everything, even a year after it's launched, adding in new game modes and just seeing whatever they can come up with that would be fun. I think this could turn into a very valuable sort of testing grounds for FromSoft that can give immediate feedback on how players may respond to certain balancing changes, visuals, and other gameplay mechanics that might risk upsetting a larger audience if they push it on a bigger game. I already mentioned the rapidly decreasing field of play similar to games like Apex Legends, and I don't really think I drove the point hard enough that Nightrain, currently at least, does not have any plans to excavate a battle royale mode from, which is something I'm infinitely grateful for. The balancing in PvP has
only having a few elements is okay. Having more than that I think is not.
improved over the years, I will admit that much, but it's still half-baked at its absolute best, and I can only imagine what you'd be signing up for as a development studio by relegating that balance to a wider scale that involves 60-something players. It's just, it's not worth it. If you're thinking about going in that direction, please don't. Like, I'm serious. Alright, I think that's just about everything I wanted to cover about the news and the game itself. It looks fun, it looks wacky, it looks like an untethered fan fiction with no proofreader, and I'm gonna lose weeks of my life to it no matter how good it is.
Of course.
But I know there's still one facet of this project that a decently
If it's good.
large portion of my audience is very curious about, which is that this new game is shaping up to be a modder's paradise. Every other shot from the gameplay trailer spotlighted some new animation or ability or just general purpose asset that could easily have like 9 different uses, and Nightrain has already been combining assets from both Elden Ring and the previous Dark Souls games, the most obvious being the models of the Nameless King and King of the Storm, leading me to a pretty well-founded conclusion that Nightrain is just going to be FromSoft's own kitchen sink for a year or two. And I would assume that with 8 new classes and their own unique abilities that likely come with their own unique animations, effect IDs, so on and so forth, the game's modding community might end up treating the game like their own sandbox in a very similar manner. I'll see you in 6 months. I'm done. So if I can just be
So like and a sub to this guy too, and yeah, this is all for today. If you like this, interact anyway with the stream or the videos after for me to make more. I'm Pluvia Aeterna and I love this type of content at least. But if you like it too, please interact with the stream in any way. Give me a sign so I know you like this and I make more. Anyway, see you guys next time. I'm out. Bye bye.